Out of Joplin, Missouri, to Detroit, to New York, and the world. He's played with the greats, Eckstein, Hampton, Machan, Woods, Moody, Dizzy, Mingus, Farmer, Akiyoshi, and so many others. Charles McPherson was the featured alto saxophonist in Clint Eastwood's film Bird and is now resident composer for the San Diego Ballet. His latest album, Reverence, on the Smoke Sessions label, and he's appearing at 2 sold-out shows with the Denver Jazz Fest Friday night at Dazzle. Ladies and gentlemen, Charles McPherson.
Let's have a big hand. Let's have a big hand.
Thank you. Thank you for the beautiful introduction.
Oh, good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you guys.
It's been a year or two since you've been in Denver.
Yes, it is. Yeah, but I've been here before. I remember the
5 Points
lobby
studio
out there.
Yeah. Well, we got you in early to acclimate because you've got a lot of saxophone playing to do.
Well, yeah, and the air is a little different. I've noticed that. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, welcome back, Charles.
Well, thank you so
Welcome
much,
back.
Carlos.
Welcome back. You know,
Thank you.
our job is to listen and to learn and to be enlightened, not just musically, but obviously with the with your stories and your life and so forth. I know that first of all, we really value your time being here this morning and not just coming in for a quick interview, but also your insight into the music and the selections that we're going to be playing here are ones that you personally have chosen. So we can start there. As a matter of fact, you've got music selected from Charlie Parker and I think Miles and Train, of course, Bud Powell, and a few of your selections as well. But before we get back into the music, when you first started playing, okay, now your roots, even though you're Joplin, Missouri, but really were you raised in Detroit?
Yeah, I came to Detroit when I was about 9.
Okay.
And from that point on, I lived in Detroit, and I left probably 1959, and that's when I joined Charlie Mingus.
Yeah. So Detroit, Steve's from Detroit, and I keep coming back to Detroit. I always say, man, without Detroit, you got no New York almost.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of great musicians.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, a lot of them. Of course, a lot of great musicians come from other places as well, like Philly, whatever. Yeah. So it's all over the place. But Detroit certainly supplied a lot of great musicians. And I grew up, of course, this would be the early 50s. And so a lot of the Detroit greats were still there, had not gone to New York yet.
Right.
So I just happened to live on a street in Detroit where this great jazz club called the Bluebird, legendary local jazz club, was on that street about 3 blocks from my house or so. And when I got interested in the particular genre of jazz, in those days, we called it bebop, modern jazz, progressive jazz, all these different labels. But the minute I got into that, then I find out that this club right down the street exclusively featured that kind of music. And then I started to walk down there, especially in the summertime, and just stand outside and listen to the musicians and talk to them when they came out on the breaks in the summer, And the house band at that point was Elvin Jones on drums, Barry Harris playing piano, Pepper Adams was the house baritone saxophone player, Thad Jones, trumpet, bass player would be a guy named Beans Richardson, very good jazz bassist, but also sometimes Paul Chambers. This was the house band, just local guys.
Yeah.
And when I heard that, then it solidified in my mind what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it was just I could not believe that kind of virtuosity. Yeah. And one time the owner he would see a bunch of youngsters hanging outside. And one day he said, if you bring your parents on a Sunday afternoon matinee, you can come and listen. And so we did that, me and my friend Lonnie Hillier, trumpet player who ended up going to New York and playing with Mingus along with myself. And we listened to the up. So when I heard that kind of virtuosity and that kind of, just that kind of talent, and I couldn't believe it. And then that was, okay, I want to learn how to do this.
Charles McPherson is in the house this morning in anticipation of his performance tomorrow evening at Dazzle Jazz. What was your first exposure to Charlie Parker?
Well, I started playing alto at about 13, and I had and there was a tenor player that was a little couple years older, maybe a year older than I, and he told me about Charlie Parker. Now I didn't know who Charlie Parker was. This is before I really knew anything about so-called progressive jazz. And so I said, okay, I remember the name. And then one day I'm in this little candy store, and the jukebox is over in the corner. And I go over there and look, and here's Charlie Parker, the name Charlie Parker. And so I put my money in because I remembered. And then the first tune I heard was on the playlist that we're going to do, Bird playing Tico Tico, which was kind of a pop tune. Maybe one wouldn't expect jazz musicians to play that, but it's very tricky, and the melody is intricate, I would say, and that was the first time I heard Charlie Parker.
Very Latinish.
Serious. I mean, really, and with great Afro-Cuban musicians that were in New York on that record date with Charlie Parker. And that was the first. And immediately, even though I knew nothing about harmony and theory or jazz, I didn't really know the academics. But immediately it resonated and spoke to me because I could, even at that early age, I could hear the logic. It just made sense. Like all the notes, they were connected seamlessly. And that's what got my attention.
Charlie Parker, Tico Tico on KUVO Jazz.
Charles McPherson plays with Terrell Stafford, 2 sold-out shows at Dazzle on Friday, part of Denver Jazz Fest, the inaugural year. Guess what? Charles McPherson is in studio with us here at KUVO's Morning Set. It's great to have you in town.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for having me. Good to be here.
All right. He's picking the music this hour. So let's see what you can cook up for us here. Instead of being on the bandstand, like we're always trying to tell, hey, you should play this, you should play that. Okay. Charles is here at the DJ table.
Yeah,
saying you should play this. Let's play it.
And Charles just gave an interesting insight as a listener of radio, and a little pet peeve for you radio people out there. Tell people what you played and maybe a little insight into the song. After the song.
And I realized, quite often that's obviously not possible.
Yeah.
But if in a perfect world, I would have, when the DJs finish a record, and they're, to say just briefly, this was so-and-so, so-and-so.
Yeah.
And if possible, even say the band.
You sure?
And then do. And then talk about something else, or play the next record, or do a commercial. I'm aware that obviously not always possible. But for a listener, quite often you turn the radio, and especially in your car or wherever, and you hear something that's in the middle of something, and it might be, what is that? I want to buy the record. Or who is that?
Right.
And then the disc jockey says, well, now we're going to a commercial, and now traffic on Main Street is, and they got to do it. So I understand, but I'm just saying.
Well, you don't have to worry about that this morning, okay?
Okay.
Because, I'm a big believer in what you just described. We call them driveway moments.
Yes.
You almost have to pull over and go, I got to wait.
I've had that happen quite
Been
often.
there.
Yeah.
Okay, and so to that point, if you tuned in during that Charlie Parker tune, that was Charlie Parker's Tico Tico.
Yes.
And Charles McPherson is in studio helping us pick out the music this morning.
And that was the first record of Charlie Parker that I heard. Was Tico Tico, and I was probably 13.
On the
my
jukebox.
goodness.
Yeah, on the jukebox, and from that point on, I had the honey. I looked. I found the records, and every kind of jazz record that played that particular genre of music. I don't care, even if it weren't Charlie Parker. I wanted to know everything about their music and all the people who played that. And that thing that got me is just the logic of his solo, how concise, perfect musical sentences, seamless, how he connects his ideas, no nonsense, smart, rhythmic, harmonic, melodic, and the virtuosity of how it's played with such authority is amazing to this day.
There it is, all summed up. If you can do all that in your solo, then you're in good shape.
Well, if you can do that with anything,
Yeah.
Yes.
depending on whatever it is you're doing, it doesn't have to be playing the saxophone. If you arrive at that level of excellence, that's called Bird.
So, Charles, how did you arrive at that level of excellence?
Well, listen. I don't know if I don't know if I've arrived, but I sure have been working on it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So, it is first of all to know that there is such a thing as that ideal, that level. First, you have to know it exists because you heard somebody's doing it, and then that's why they're called icons. And all you do is just use that as a yardstick. But of course, what you want to do ideally is develop your own musical style, your own style of anything. I don't care if you are a writer. You definitely learn from other people, but you do want to write, and it's your writing. So, but the other people, they are an icon, an ideal, something to reach for. But you develop, because even Charlie Parker had heroes, and it was Lester Young, a guy named Buster Smith, great alto player from Kansas City, and a bunch of other people. People like Schubert, great saxophone player, everybody, along with all, everything. And that's what you have to do if you want to be. If you want to be an artist, you have to be able to understand all of the emotions of human beings. A great artist, you got to be able to know what sadness and sorrow is, and you got to be able to play that or write that. You have to know what great ecstasy and joy, and that is. You got to know you got to be able to write that, play that. If you want to make one human being feel that, you got to know what love is. Really, you got to know what rejection is. You got to know what acceptance is. You got to know the whole deal. This is to be a complete great artist. And that's the difference between art and craft, is that the great artist has the craft and they have what I'm talking about now, the ability to express the whole human condition. So it's like being a great actor or actress that can play any part. That's it. And that's what I try to be able to do, and I'm aware of it, and that is something to reach for.
One of the tunes and artists that you selected for us to play this morning is Bud Powell.
Yeah.
And tell me a little bit about Bud Powell.
Well, Bud Powell to me is, he definitely probably is the father of modern piano playing. Everything is connected up. So there are great pianists that lead up to Bud Powell, that Bud Powell learned from and listened to. Art Tatum for sure, and people like Earl Hines and other people as well. But when Bird and Dizzy And that group of young players sort of morphed into what became bebop or modern jazz or whatever you want to call it. Bud Powell was kind of the piano player that was right in with that. Of course, you got Thelonious Monk, who's one of the founding fathers.
Right.
But Bud really, I think Bud was a real genius, like Charlie Parker. Yeah. Every bit of genius. Yeah. And it was he had sort of a tragic life, but he was a genius, though.
Well, we've got a track that is considered one of his signature pieces called Glass Enclosure.
Okay.
Which we selected. So let's check it out. Mm-hmm. Bud Powell on KUVO Jazz. Bud Powell with Glass Enclosure. If you are a person about my age who grew up in the 60s, mid-60s, and you come to jazz just a little bit later, and you come to jazz through musicians who are playing music from these masters.
Yeah.
You inevitably go back to the masters. To hear the original, what their interpretation was of a tune like this. I remember hearing, I think the first time I ever heard that song was Chick Corea was playing it. Mm-hmm. And it just fascinated me because the classical part in there and so forth. And then finding out, okay, well, obviously this is Bud Powell. And I really didn't know. I've seen the name, but I really hadn't really heard. And you got to hear it. You got to feel it. And that's just opened up the door. Even more.
I agree. And when you go, the interesting thing, if you really are a jazz aficionado or say a musician, is to go back a few generations, because, for instance, you take John Coltrane, for instance. Okay, here he is, and he's doing what he does. But who did he listen to actually play like he does? Right? Yeah. And then guess what? A lot of the bebop guys, their heroes were the swing guys that a lot of young people would think old-fashioned and not important. But if you take Charlie Parker and say, who did he listen to? He didn't listen to himself. Who did he listen to actually come up and play Tico Tico like that? And guess what? It's going to be the older players, the swing players. Something they had that made the younger guard, which would be Charlie Parker, Monk, and people like that, they took tidbits of that, certain nuances of that. They're younger, and it just develops. It morphs. It's not even such an act of deliberation. It's more or less a gradation or a morphing into. And then all of a sudden, you got a slew of people who kind of play like that. It becomes a school and a style, and then somebody names it. But really, it's just music. Yeah. So there you go. So for good advice for young musicians and even fans is not only check out jazz when you entered, check out a couple of generations before, and then you understand the now.
Right.
Yeah, and then you see how everything is really connected.
Yeah, when you go back and listen to the big bands, the Bassies and the Ellingtons,
of course,
and you've got these, obviously the Coleman Hawkins and the Lester Youngs, and oh my goodness, it just goes on and on.
Yeah,
like you said, they were the ones that these young the guys who were swinging the blues.
Yeah, all of that, and everything's connected up.
Yeah.
No Isaac Newton, no Stephen Hawking.
That's a beautiful way of playing it. Yeah. So we've got a tune.
I just wanted to know, you mentioned in the last break about finding your voice, and when you let us know Charlie Parker was that initial spark. As a musician that's been working, when did you find yours? Was it like you had an idea and then it blossomed over your career, or was there like a point in your career where you
I think it's just kind of a hope that I do. That's one of the hardest things into jazz is to have a style that's recognizable to somebody else other than yourself. So I hope so. But it's something that you kind of morph into as you get, as you develop as a person. Then how you think and what you are. Then that comes into playing, and usually it's kind of a natural thing. So yeah, but I think to actually be aware of this is to be done as a thought is to actually know that, and usually it happens just like when you're a little kid and you're in school and the teacher is showing you how to write, you try to imitate the teacher. You make your A, your B, C look like that. But eventually, everyone has their own distinct handwriting. And so I think quite often art, or probably everything else, kind of is that. You are yourself. Monk said this once. And he was a man of few words, but he said, somebody asked him, how did he get so unique and different? And he actually said, he thought for a moment, and he said, well, don't forget, you are already a genius just because you look like yourself. And the only difference is I dug deep for mine, and maybe you didn't, or maybe you haven't. But that was a very heavy thought, is that you already all are this. You just have to find it and then work it.
I think it's time we play something from your most recent release on Smoke Records. It's Reverence. And I think it's the first time you've recorded for Smoke, Smoke Jazz, and outstanding group, including Terrell Stafford, who will be accompanying you on the bandstand tomorrow night at Dazzle. Jeff Patton, the keyboardist, David Wong, and Billy Drummond. And we've got a couple of tracks on here. Talk to me a little bit about Blues for Lonnie in 3 or Dynamic Duo, whichever one you think we should. We've played this album a lot.
Well, Blues for Lonnie is long, so I don't know how much time you have. Dynamic, so I don't know what the constraints are.
Okay.
I had another one, Come Play With Me.
All right.
I don't mind. I mean, it's up to you. I don't want to.
No, that's fine.
I don't.
Abby has the controls.
Yeah.
What's available?
we have them all. It's just a matter of Come Play With Me. Let's see.
Dynamic
Tell
Duo.
Tell me about that one then.
Yeah.
Well, that was. I think Lewis Nash is on there, and is Tom Harrell? You know what? I can't remember if it's a quartet or if Tom Harrell is on that one. Yeah. No, I don't think he is. Yeah. But it's Lewis Nash, myself, and probably Peter Washington.
That was a Funhouse album.
Yeah. Well, it's called Come Play With Me. The whole album is Come Play. That's just it's called Funhouse.
Okay. All right. We got that? Let's do it.
In studio, Charles McPherson before the sold-out shows on Friday at Dazzle with Terrell Stafford, part of the inaugural Denver Jazz Fest. Mr. McPherson, good to have you in studio with us.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You, the most recent release that we have in this studio is called Reverence.
Yes.
And it's tied in with the great jazz establishment in New York up at about 104th, I think it is, 108th Street up in New York, called Smoke. Yes. It used to be something else back in the day, but I've been to it on a few occasions. Gosh, I remember Harold Mayburn holding court down there for years and years and years.
Yes.
And your latest record is dedicated to Barry Harris, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about Barry, who I caught a couple of times in New York as well. Okay.
Well, Barry, it's a live record, so you have the that nuance there, that vibe. Yeah. Barry was the pianist that I talked about earlier that was playing in this jazz club right down the street from my house, the Bluebird. So I met him just from standing outside listening to music. And he saw my horn. And I actually set in one afternoon at this club at a session, and he heard me. And he kind of complimented me, but I couldn't really play. I didn't know how to improvise. I could play the melodies of things, but I didn't really know the academics of improvising. I had good ears, but that doesn't always do it for you. And he knew that, and he volunteered to actually show me and get me started. And he happened to live right around the corner from me as well. Wow. So I started going around to his house in the afternoon, and he showed me, the academics of harmony and theory. So that's how I learned. He was my first teacher and mentor in a lot of different ways musically, but he was almost like a second father figure type because he's 10 years older. Yeah. I was about 15 when I met him. He was probably 25.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, and then I studied with him up until about 19. And by then I was already playing professionally, kind of,
Right.
And that was it. So this CD is dedicated to him. It's called Reverence, so that's my feeling toward Barry. Yeah. And the tune that you're going to play is entitled Blues for Lonnie. Now, Lonnie is the young trumpet player that lived right down the street from me. All of this in the same neighborhood. So he lived down the street. We knew each other when we were 9, 10 years old. And he ended up playing trumpet, I alto sax, and we ended up both working with Charlie Mingus.
Lonnie Hilliard.
Lonnie Hilliard.
Yeah.
So this tune is dedicated to him. He passed on pretty early in life. He was only about 45 or so.
Wow.
And but anyway, he was a really wonderful trumpet player. Yeah. So I dedicate this tune to him.
Mr. McPherson, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and those of us who will be in the house tomorrow night consider ourselves fortunate because the show is sold out. Charles McPherson and Terrell Stafford, along with a great rhythm section. Hey, stay warm.
Okay.
Well, you're from Detroit, man. This ain't nothing.
I'm used to it, but I've been in San Diego for years.
You're spoiled now.
I got to get my weather chops up. Yeah.
All right, Abi, let's do it. Here is this is from the Reverence album, and it's Charles McPherson. We're going to do Blues for Lonnie, but let me give you the musicians one more time. On this record, Terrell Stafford on trumpet, Jet Patton on piano, David Wong on bass, and Billy Drummond on drums. Charles McPherson on alto sax.